This is the Botkeeper ad. Just to announce it, I do like to be transparent that this is an ad.
We literally got paid to read this.
If you don't know, now you know.
Botkeeper technology offers an affordable, scalable, accurate, and efficient solution with best-in-class support.
It's a lot of descriptors. Botkeeper combines AI, or artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and high-quality skilled accountants. Interesting.
The Botkeeper platform has evolved to better fit the needs of CPAs and accounting firms that are struggling to provide their own clients with essential accounting and advisory services. Firms and their client base will receive 24/7 accounting and support. Botkeeper
24/7. Yeah. What about that? Like, do we need?
I like to round up to 25/10. That's what I tell my clients.
25/10, not 25/8.
Unlimited support, timely and accurate financials, seamless integration. Botkeeper learns subtle nuances of client business and continuously improves over time.
It is made for CPA firms now. I mean, it was made directly for clients. They switched over and they don't do direct-to-client work anymore. They just work with CPA firms. So I feel like that is an improvement in and of itself, and it's going to continue just like artificial intelligence is, and just like machine learning. They have a shorter feedback loop on what accounting firms like. So they can continue to get better and offer better solutions for us accounting firms.
So why don't you integrate, automate, sync, and transform your bookkeeping and pre-accounting tasks with Botkeeper today. Visit botkeeper.com for more information.
And mention Sons of CPAs.
Yeah, just yell it out.
Yell it out. Scream it from the rooftops. Visit botkeeper.com for more information. Thank you.
I'll take a second to just tell, for people that don't know what my company does, we've built an app and a podcast studio behind it to actually build the kind of continuing education learning experience that we always wanted. I think any accountant that's listening out there, or frankly any professional, because we hear this from lawyers and doctors and everyone else, when they think about their continuing ed, 9 times out of 10 they view it as like this checkbox that they do at the end of the year.
I feel like a sex worker who's had more than one client in a day.
How do you even know about that?
I feel like I'm your prostitute. You're pimping me out.
You should feel like happy but a little dirty. Is that what you're saying?
The happiness part isn't there, just the dirty part.
Just the dirty. Yeah. No, this is exactly the part that'll get me canceled.
This is what you were talking about.
Yeah, but that's okay. I don't know. Or have we started? Is this starting?
So,
or you guys do like a formal start?
That was usually off the cuff until I actually read our intro.
So I say funny stuff. I bring the humor.
Okay.
This way, it can stay less structured.
The not Jew.
Yeah. I'm the half Jew.
What do they say? They get like 2 Jews in a room. You get 3 opinions. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's
he's only half too. And now we've got 2.5.
Oh, I love it. This is the 2.5 Jews part 2.
All we need is Charlie Sheen, and we've got ourselves a very, very successful sitcom.
Hello and welcome. We are all the Sons of CPAs. Join us as we question the current state of the accounting and tax industry with the next generation of professionals leading this space. We are the change agents in an industry fraught with money and inertia. Let's begin the Sons of CPAs with your hosts, Jason Ackerman and Scott Scarino. We have a very special guest, all the way from Canada. What part of Canada?
Toronto.
That's
you'll.
I wanted
Toronto.
Scott to actually point it out on a map.
Yeah, I mean it is. I think we're the 3rd or 4th largest city in North America. So we're not totally country.
We the North, baby. Let's go.
We the North. That's right.
Michael Kravshik, CPA and CA.
CPA and CA, which for anybody listening in the US, that's going to sound really weird. But what happened was in Canada, there used to be 3 different accounting designations: CA, CMA, and CGA. And about 5-6 years ago, they all amalgamated into the CPA. But the CAs were upset about that because they felt, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but they felt that the CA designation was the top of the litter. They really pushed for keeping our legacy designations after. So now we say that we're CPAs, CAs, or CPA, CMAs.
Really good for the consumer.
Yeah, well, that was they said one of the reasons that they did it was to make it easier for people to understand who we were, but I'm not sure if we accomplished that.
So, because all of you Canada people know each other, Brian Clare we had on the episode. I'm not even sure if you know
I
him, but
do
I
know
think you
Brian
do
Clare.
because you all Canadian people know each other. And
I hate to reinforce the stereotype, but Brian's a great guy. So
he is, and he said the word amalgamation, and he gave us the whole spiel about the CPA
there
and
you go.
CA. And so I just love that you said the word amalgamation because I put that in the title of his episode. I don't hear it that much. I love the word, but I don't know like where to start because you've had a very impressive career. It just blows my mind. I was looking at every different position you've had, and they're all more or less different titles too. Sales,
Yeah.
audit, consultant, a TA, security analyst, CFO, director, and now co-founder and host.
It sounds like Catch Me If You Can.
I mean, I think you used the word impressive or something like that, when I would just use the word weird. But fair enough. I'll take your word.
Well, weird to me doesn't mean anything. Weird is normal. I think it's impressive because you have a lot of different perspectives from what you can take away from those things. And if you learned what you didn't like or learned what you like, it doesn't matter. You learned when
Yeah.
you were to me.
I have a positive view of the word weird. Whenever I meet CPAs that have really interesting backgrounds or have gone in strange directions in their career, I gravitate towards those people because I think that they're generally pretty interesting. And we all, as CPAs, we all have at least a similar professional and educational background.
Weird and unique, right? They're both essentially the same thing.
Yeah,
Unique
exactly.
has always had a very positive take on it, and weird has just been weird, right?
I think it's been given a bad connotation. Weird is cool in my books.
In a different episode, we were basically taking the term CPA and Jew and trying to amalgamate those too, so to speak. So that one didn't really work, but sometimes.
So why are you not a doctor or a lawyer?
Yeah, well, I had to pick one of the three, and maybe I'm not smart enough. I don't know. Doctors.
For me, I
doctors,
don't like blood. That's
yeah, it's a lot of pressure, right? Like if we screw something up, like nobody dies. I feel like
that's what I tell people all the time. Like I'm like, I want you to make mistakes here. That's how you learn. Like you're not a doctor. No one dies. I literally use that all the time.
Good way to say it. Yeah. Yeah. And like lawyers, like, I mean, they make more money than us, but like when you find out what they actually do, I don't know.
I love
you
that.
Die 1,000 deaths as a lawyer.
I feel like a lot of people feel the way about lawyers that people feel about auditors. Like when you get there, people are just like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Where's the shittiest room in this office that we can put them in?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to eat up way
out of this. Yeah.
I remember my first audit gig. We got into this little room. There was a team of I think like 5 of us, and it was a room meant for like a single person. And I was posted up like at a cabinet, so I had to my knees had to be like to the side the entire day working on the laptop. And I was like, they really don't like us apparently.
Always the worst room in the house. No windows.
The ergonomics were not the best. So,
wow, it's a thankless job.
Well, and I mean, I think
some people do it for the love of the job, Scott.
You think so?
Like, yeah. and I was talking more about financial audit than tax audit. Like I'm a terrible tax accountant. I would never even call myself a tax accountant in any sense of the word, but I met a couple of those people in audit that just truly love it. And the reality is it's an important job, right? Like it needs to happen. We need financial statements to be free of material misstatement. I mean, it is actually important to have done. And the people who I remember being very jealous of the people I started at EY. And you'd see these people that just loved what they did. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Because I'm having a brutal time here.
Tell us the weirdest audit experience you have at EY.
Okay. Well, I guess it depends on how we want to categorize weirdest. But the weirdest thing I found in an audit was I was auditing a uranium mine that was in Cameroon. And I saw on the books that they had an expense for a cow. And I was like, what, like, why would a mine need a cow? And I actually dug into that one just purely because it was interesting. I was like, what the heck are they buying a cow for? And as it turns out, lunch. made a lot of sense. They literally bought a cow. Like this was like a recurring expense item where they would buy a cow and a bag of onions. I remember that specifically, a cow and a bag of onions, and they would slaughter the cow and chop it up and feed all the mine workers with beef and onions.
It's a fresh way to get some. Yeah, it's a practical and fresh way to get lunch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, okay, you know what? I'll give you one more because this was my first audit experience and it made me realize what we were just talking about, how people don't like auditors. I was in the audit room and our audit room was right beside the exit to the building. And we had a window that looked out into the hallway that like went out to the exit of the building. And the window started about like, let's call it waist high. And one day I was going to ask the client for some more information. I left our office and I turned just to like look down the hall and I saw my client like crouching down and kneeling, like crawling under the level of the window out the door so that he was trying to escape us without us noticing that he was leaving the office.
No.
That stuck in my mind is like, wow, he really.
So caught in the act, how does somebody play that? Where do they go with that?
And so it was really hard. It was very awkward. And this guy was 45 to 50 years old. And at the time I was like, is this really how the world works? But
this poor guy, that's something not to aspire.
That's why timesheets are bad.
Yeah, exactly.
He's already clocked out for the day. Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
Crouching cow.
Like how low must your life be when you're 45 and you're just like on the floor crawling because you don't want to talk to an external auditor?
I mean, you'd almost like flag it as a fraud risk, but I really don't think that's what it was. I'm pretty sure the guy just didn't want to deal with us. It was like, you know what? Fuck it. Oh, sorry.
You don't have to apologize. That's that opens it up for me. Like that.
Hey, you know what? I'm Canadian. Sorry is like the most common word we say.
Sorry.
Well, and don't forget because A is a very versatile word,
I used to have versatile tattooed on my arm.
No, you didn't.
I said I did, yes.
Hold on. This is very important, Michael. Why? Versatile?
Why? Yeah.
Of all the words.
Yeah. I was on a lot of drugs when I did that.
I'm pretty sure it's because it's a versatile word.
I think so.
You got it removed?
More versatile. Back into the world. And they actually, you can't even tell that it was there. It's pretty dope. I took like 3 sessions of like a laser removal type thing and it's gone. No grafting.
That's how you know you're an accountant, because like if you were cool, you would have got like, I don't know, Beetlejuice's head or something on there. Something real cool.
I wish I did.
The word versatile. My wife got a tattoo when she was 15 on a cruise ship, and it is like a random Japanese symbol, and she says it means like truth or something, but I'm pretty sure it just means like fuck you, you stupid idiot. But
and you've never looked it up, and she's never looked it up too.
God no, I don't want to know.
I don't know. Do you do a reverse image search on something like that to figure out what the symbol is?
You find a Japanese.
This is the part. Yeah.
So back to the filler words. Let's kind of talk about being a TA.
Sure.
You're a TA for a little while too.
Yeah. Well, I went and did my designation. I worked in consulting after I was at the firm, and it just like it wasn't speaking to me from a career perspective. And so I've always been a big, I'd call it like history nerd and geopolitics junkie. So I found this program in Ottawa that focused on counterterrorism. And I was like, cool, I'm interested in this. Like, I don't know what I want to do in my career. So I did what every good CPA does at that point in time, is went and got a master's degree in counterterrorism. And that was a fun little detour in my life. And to your point earlier, like I'm not ultimately using like the specific knowledge base that I gained doing that in my job right now, but it was an interesting experience.
At least it wasn't Japanese history.
Okay, funny you should say that, but actually my final essay for my entire program was on the Meiji Emperor and how he transformed Japan in the late 1800s. So I fell in love with Japan when I went to visit maybe like 15 years ago. I was there for a month, and it's just like the culture, the people, like it's just such an interesting country. And I enjoyed
I'm
it.
fascinated. Should have had Peter on as a co-host.
I've never been to Japan. We were supposed to go during COVID, but thanks, Obama. Couldn't go.
Okay.
I'm
Just
telling
what
you,
you say.
you've never met a more just like generous and like nice people that will just like. I remember asking somebody who was just on the street like where I could find an internet cafe, and this person walked me like 3.5 blocks and like showed me where it was. It's like that would never happen
You
in
go to New
North
York.
America.
Do you know where an internet cafe is? Fuck off! Like New
Yeah.
York, they're just like,
Yeah, exactly.
why are you talking to
Exactly.
me?
Yeah.
You know,
So
I
they're
want
just
to.
like the
I want to
nicest
go
people.
so bad. I mean, the food, just for the food alone.
Yeah, yeah, and it's incredible, and their history is just really interesting. As I said, I'm a history nerd, so that stuff appeals to me.
So, an accountant history nerd, do you feel
That's right.
accountants should be more forward-facing?
I mean, generally speaking, yeah, but like this is going to sound like a silly comment to say, but history is the only thing that actually happened, and I think everybody gets something out of learning history because human nature doesn't change that much. The technology changes, the times change, the geopolitical environment changes, but there are constants throughout history. And I find that I've been able to understand our current world and where some of the world might go in hopefully a little bit of a more nuanced way by understanding our history just as a species.
History actually happened. That's a, it's a
Yeah.
very making
But
me
it's
think
true. I
here.
mean,
Yeah.
people make the same mistakes all over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and generally that's from like a lack of historical understanding. I mean, there's a great line, I think it's Otto von Bismarck, that said, only fools learn from their own mistakes. You know, the wise learn from the mistakes of others. So it's, you know, I mean, I learn from both apparently because I make a ton of mistakes, but I try to learn from the mistakes from others as well, at least.
There you go. Change your mindset. That's change. I've been changing mine. Been trying to bridge the gap between learning from history, learning from mistakes, and also making the right decisions to move forward.
Yeah.
And it's nobody can tell. Nobody sees the future, obviously, but the historians know best. We can all go back to them. So,
Yeah. Sometimes.
so what was your of of your other stints? I think being. I want to hear about gesture logic because
Sure.
that was your first foray in becoming a CFO. Is that right?
Yeah. And like, if I'm being honest with everybody, like CFO is not an appropriate title for what I was doing there. So I joined this company. This was in Ottawa, actually. I was living in Ottawa at the time, and I made friends with a guy who's this brilliant electrical engineer, and they had used a technology called electromyography, which is like medical grade muscle monitoring technology. It like monitors the electrical signals that your muscles produce when you contract them. And they were trying to apply that to a commercial product of some sort. It was like when wearable technology was all the rage for that 2 or 3 years. And I mean, I got to work with some incredibly intelligent, talented people, and the entire team was great. But we just, because of the issues around commercialization, and when I say that, like, I mean, the thing worked well in a lab, but to have it work in real life circumstances where, maybe it's raining, maybe you're sweating, maybe you've got hair on your leg, you've got an extra ring of fat than somebody else, which actually impacts the way that this thing calculates
Oh
what's
wow.
going on in your muscles. There's all of these kind of real world
Variables.
factors,
Yeah.
yeah, that came into play. And so anyway, I mean, it was like a really good experience for me to learn how to do a lot of the things that served me well as I was starting my own company, but the company itself ultimately didn't succeed. I ended up leaving. The company totally fell apart about a month afterwards, but like it wasn't, I had some stroke of genius about it. I saw the writing on the wall at that point. I think everybody did, and it was time to move on. But nonetheless, it was a great experience, and it taught me a heck of a lot about how to start a business.
So speaking of wearables, I wear a ring that measures my sleep, the Aura. I've been wearing it all year,
I'm
and
no
it
expert in this, but I've been told that it's pretty much BS. Realistically, that's actually really simple. Like your phone has a gyroscope in it. This device probably has a gyroscope in it. It knows when it's moving. So when you're moving around a lot, it'll assume that you're not sleeping. And it probably also has geolocation. So it knows like, hey, you're actually at home and in your bed rather than out partying like I know you normally would be, Scott.
So is it a magician's trick? Is that what they've done? Is fool me into thinking it's all working? Whatever they're doing, it's working.
That's right.
Well, speaking of sleep, how has your sleep been? No, I actually, it's a relevant question, right? Like you're a new father.
I do have a 5-month-old, so not good.
Oh, I'm about to have a baby in January. Should I just
congrats.
leave town? Should I start driving to Mexico? What should I do?
Well, I mean, I don't know about Mexico, but you should definitely get your sleep in because babies don't care what time it is, as I have found out, which I probably should have expected ahead of time. But no, I wouldn't drive to Mexico. It's a really wonderful experience in general. It just doesn't do well for sleep.
It's rewarding in many other ways.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm not going to tell anybody to go out and get a sleep ring because this is just a big joke. What is that noise?
We got people doing some lawn work outside, but that's okay because we're talking about reach reporting right now.
We're not talking about lawn work then.
No. This is our reach reporting ad. You've never built a report like what Reach can offer because you've never had such an easy access to all your financial data before.
I feel like I already know how to use this product and I haven't started using it.
You want a product that you can use right away because if it takes a lot of time to do it, accountants don't have that time.
Well, we also don't want to learn new things. A lot of times we just want something to work right out the box because we spent our whole lives learning new things. We don't want to learn something new when it comes to reporting. We know what we want the report to look like, and now we just want it to be effortless. I think Reach does that.
You can build any metric that you want. It's like using Excel, but with live accounting data.
Live accounting data.
God,
That's pretty
accountants
cool.
love that.
They do. They love Excel, joining live data, Excel-like functionality, and gorgeous presentation. You know, it's like Word, Excel, PowerPoint all working together. Reach is the Microsoft suite of reporting. Sweet. I think that's pretty cool. The clients will absolutely love the reports that I will send them.
But it takes minutes to build and create. So basically, it's not going to take you that much time, and you're going to be able to give them fantastic reports.
So for our firm, at least, the success of our advisory services really relies on a strong relationship, and strong relationships start with communication. You can't just give them data without the visuals, right? They need the visuals. Clients get a deep understanding of their financial situation.
And reporting for clients is tough for a bunch of reasons. It is tough because every client's a little different. So you need a software that can help you standardize some processes and create beautiful reports, and that's what Reach does.
Dashboards and reports that kind of tell a story, but turn your custom reports into templates you can automate. I love the customization for their reports too. You can customize your branding. They basically white label everything.
You like custom Jordans.
I do
like
custom Jordans.
And you like your custom reporting.
Custom Jordans and custom reporting. I can't fathom what they're going to do next.
So go to reachreporting.com and check them out.
Reach Reporting, complex data made simple. I really want to hear the impetus to LumiQ.
Did you know there's another LumiQ.com that's a financial planning software?
Yes, and they're based in Singapore.
Because I'm looking at that, I was like, that doesn't sound like the right one.
No, I think they pronounce it LumiQ too. I don't think
LumiQ.
I don't think they're LumiQ. I think they're LumiQ.
I've heard it three different ways because I said LumiQ.
LumiQ.
I thought it was. Yeah.
That's still better than LumiQ. I mean, I don't know.
Is it LumiQ?
Well, so originally we were Luminary, and we weren't in education to start out with. We were a job, like a job board. We were a recruitment platform, and then when we started doing the CPE podcasts, we had actually been doing it for a little bit, but then Luminary, the big US podcasting platform, launched, $100 million or whatever it was before they even had a product out. And we were like, shit, we don't want to deal with legal battles over this name and podcasting. So we just came up with a derivative name, LumiQ, because it's like IQ, intelligence.
That's why I think I called it LumiQ, but I think
so that's fair.
At some point, if you get acquired by Luminary, you can be a division of Luminary, and it
You
would
could
be
be
yeah.
LumiQ Luminary.
That's right.
Lumicuminary.
See, the problem is I don't think they're actually doing very well. Every time I read reports of like what they're doing, it's not great. So
Well, I guess start with it was you and Adam are the co-founders.
yeah. So Adam's my best friend for a very long time. We decided to start a company together, but we didn't have we weren't one of those founders that was like, we have this visionary idea, we want to go start it. At one point we came up with, must have been 20 or 30 different ideas, and we started to validate them. And the first product that we ended up launching once we did that was what we called Luminary, until that podcasting company decided to take that name. We were like years ahead of them, by the way. But
It's like until that but you are a podcasting company, so it's like
we weren't
so
at the
crazy.
time,
I know, yeah.
Do you think they stole it from you?
No, I mean, it's a great word. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is a good word.
You know? Well, a lot of people didn't know what it meant.
Is it worthy to get you tattoo it on your arm? Is it that worthy or no?
We spelled it with an I at the end, not a Y. We were trying to be startup-y and cool.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing this recruitment platform in accounting, and we decided we couldn't do it for everyone. The kind of the core insight behind the business when we launched it was, people don't actively look for work until they're extremely miserable in their job. And if we can find a way of reaching passive candidates in a useful and not too onerous way, that people would do that, window shopping for jobs. And so we developed kind of a smart job alert system where people could go and say, here are the types of things that I like to do, and keep me up to date with interesting roles. And we did that business. I mean, it worked to an extent. We ended up running that for about 2.5 years, and we did all sorts of things in that space. We made partnerships with our CPA organizations and software companies like Xero, and we did events. We did all sorts of stuff, but we had a level of product market fit, but scaling it was incredibly difficult. And so what we tried to do was add things on top of it. And we started to do all sorts of things. We created a program to help CPAs learn about the startup market, and then actually place them in little internships at startups who had no idea, founders who had never seen a balance sheet or an income statement before. Help those founders use your financial skill set to help those founders get off the ground. And this actually was a pretty successful program, in the sense that something like 600 CPAs went through. We had an education component of it where I actually taught a class on startup terminology, finance, theory, all sorts of different aspects of what somebody who's never been involved in that space would need to know to be able to be effective. And then how to apply your accounting skill set, your finance skill set in that world. And then a lot of those placements actually turned into people becoming CFOs and finance directors and stuff like that at startups. So that was interesting. We created a mentorship program. We did all sorts of different stuff. We did live events. And it was the mixture of the live events that we did, the educational side of the startup program that we did, and just being really close to CPAs. Every time we talked to them, they're like, yeah, CPE or CPD, that's a huge pain point for us.
So
and we just
part of the flywheel. It sounds like you just keep adding things to create a better funnel. And
that's what we thought. But what ended up happening was, we got through this process and we're like, wow, this is a huge pain point. Why don't we try to solve this? And we both, me and my co-founder, both love podcasts. It's such a powerful medium. Let's just try to create podcast. It was actually, do you remember? This was 3 years ago when the HQ trivia game was all the rage.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was literally this moment exactly. And we were like, oh, maybe we should do an HQ trivia game for accountants to get their continuing ed. And that very quickly, we realized that was a completely ridiculous, silly idea, because, you can't really teach anything to people in that format. And then we turned to podcasts because we love podcasts. And immediately, it was obvious that this would be a much better business than what we were doing. So we built the product. And literally, I think in our second month of being out into market with this product, we're like, okay, forget everything else. We're just going to drop it all and focus on this. And we are happy we made that decision, for sure.
So that's hard for a lot of people to do. And you've mentioned you had a company that was almost $1 million, and you guys decided to scrap it.
And he didn't say what the expenses were.
Well,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, we were roughly breaking even, something like that, but
Yeah.
we were working our asses
That's
off.
what I love.
right?
I love when accountants say like, "Oh yeah, I'm making I'm grossing 4 million," but like they don't say what
Spending 8,
that
but
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
like ultimately the hardest thing is to give up these ideas and these businesses, these things that you spent a lot of time and effort working on. I mean, that was, I would say, like the first time we did it was really the valley of sorrows for us, because we were like, do we just go back to our jobs at this point? What do we do? By the time that we were giving up on the business, we had our sights on a much better business. And we were really excited about that. And so it was a lot easier that time because we saw a path to being something much more meaningful.
You guys had a lot of endurance too. I mean, it just sounds like the sunk cost aspect. I mean, you could be a prisoner to some of the decisions you guys made earlier on, and you decided to cut that bait.
Yeah.
That's enlightening. So then, starting to do this, you guys wanted to change the world. It sounds like you may have.
I hope at least that we have created a slightly better world for the accountants. I'll take a second to just tell, for people that don't know what my company does, we've built an app and a podcast studio behind it to actually build the kind of continuing education learning experience that we always wanted. I think any accountant that's listening out there, or frankly, any professional, because we hear this from lawyers and doctors and everyone else, when they think about their continuing ed, 9 times out of 10, they view it as like this checkbox that they do at the end of the year. And it's silly because you're a really valuable person. Whoever's listening, your charge out rate is something meaningful, right? Like your time is worth something and you have other things in your life that you want to do. Why would you waste your time doing something that is meaningless just to check that box? And so
Just to get your ethics for the year.
exactly. And so we said to ourselves, can we make learning engaging and also valuable? And like, I'm a big nerd, so I felt that the answer to that question was yes, because like a lot of times school can ruin learning. And I felt like we can make learning fun and interesting. And that's why we actually, when we launched, our tagline was enjoy CPE, because people would read that and be like, what do you mean enjoy CPE? It's like enjoying like getting my teeth pulled? What are you talking about? And that was kind of our mentality around it. Was like, there's 2 key components here. One is that it's not only just podcasting. We've built an entire app ecosystem, Android, iOS, web app, where all of the quizzing, all of the documentation, all of everything is built directly into the app. So you don't have to worry about anything. It's all mobile. It's all convenient. You can do it while you're on a walk, or, changing your baby's diaper, or on your commute, or doing the laundry, right? This is a way to get your CPD done during that time. So that's one. That's the convenience factor, the ease of use factor. And then number 2 is the actual content. And, don't get me wrong, it's important to learn updates to IFRS or US GAAP or whatever standards that you're using, but that's not all of what it is to be an accountant. To be a successful professional, there is a whole range of skill sets. And I'm very much of the belief that like what's in between the ears of very successful professionals is a lot more valuable than what's in between the covers of a textbook. And can we take people who would never otherwise create CPE and turn them into instructors, right? And that's where, like, we've been really lucky to have great guests like the CFO of Slack or Shopify or Yahoo or Yelp, or the guy that invented Amazon Alexa, or the founder of BlackBerry. All these kind of different interesting people that have a lot of insight to share with aspiring professionals. And these people can offer 2 hours of their time to record a podcast with me. They won't go and spend 80 hours of their time to go develop a course and teach you whatever would be in your traditional type of CPE learning. And so we tried to mix, okay, can we take practical experience, great teachers, quote unquote, like I'm doing air quotes for teachers, and can we wrap that into a very convenient experience and like a 2021 experience? I'm sure anybody who's done their CPE is probably used to like a 90s era webinar platform where a guy with a pocket protector is talking about a tax rule update. And like,
or an app vendor that's just trying to sell you something and then slip
yes,
it in CPE in the middle there. Yeah.
And we tried at the beginning. We were like, well, maybe we should get like sponsorships from software companies or whatever to do podcasts with us. And after we did one, And we decided against it forever after that. Not because they were a bad partner, they were a great partner. But the thing is that you're mixing incentives, right? Like if you're getting paid to put this content on there, what do they want? They want leads from you, they want mentions, they want all of these things. Whereas what we were looking to do is create the best learning experience we can, both in terms of the value that you get, like how much you upskill, what you learn about, and just the convenience and all the other things that I mentioned. And so we felt that it was just we had a conflict of interest. And so we from then on we were like, no, like anytime we're developing content, for us it's about how do we create the best learning experience possible.
Well, you guys have a closed system. That's the great thing about that. You go into that ecosystem, it's a closed system, but you've put up the paywall.
When is the product going to be available in the US?
It already is.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, as of like 3 weeks ago, I think we launched fully in the US. We're fully NASBA approved. We are working on doing all of the regulatory ethics stuff just because we know people need it. And so we're just kind of adding it to our tool set of our library so that people can get everything done all in one place.
Ethics is the creative constraint that you have to deal with. Like, and I'm sure you can make it really good, but that's the one thing that you have to fit in that box.
Well, here's the thing, the regulatory ethics stuff, like we have very little control over, right? Like you have to talk about these certain rules and things like that. But on the other side of ethics, like in Canada, at least the ethics requirement is less restrictive. And so we've done a lot of really cool ethics content because like a lot of times ethics, the way that it's taught is like this very black and white thing. Like I'm sure you've all like experienced that video where it's like, Susie works for Bill and Bill invites Susie over to his house after work and places his hand on her thigh. It's like, okay, like obviously that is like not appropriate. Those aren't gray areas. That's not ethically interesting because you know that this guy's being a jerk, right? What's interesting about ethics are the gray areas. And so we did this great episode with a guy who's an AI ethicist. And he was talking about just like, what are the real challenges around using AI ethically? And there are lots of real business implications on this, like CC, Meta, or Facebook, or whatever you want to call them, and Google and all these other companies that are doing all sorts of terrible things with AI, from my perspective at least. But we also had the Business Competition Commissioner of Canada come and speak about some of the things that they were dealing with, price fixing scandals and collusion. And like, how do you tell when something's like, is it collusion to the point of being illegal or immoral, or is it just appropriate business practices? And so like to me, ethics is all about the gray area. That's what makes it a compelling and difficult and challenging topic. And if you just degrade it to like, don't steal money and don't cook the
Do
books.
the right thing. Like, what's the right thing? Like that's
exactly. Like, don't cook the books. It's like, thanks. I didn't need to take a course to remember that. But I think what's really interesting is when there are these situations where it's a lot more gray. And it's like, how do you push people to think about the various factors, the dilemmas that exist, those ethical dilemmas that exist when you, on one hand, like, for example, on one hand, you have a fiduciary duty to your shareholders. And on the other hand, you don't want to ruin the environment. And like sometimes those are at odds, like those, the incentives are completely misaligned there. So how do you deal with that? That's an ethical situation that is interesting to think through and try to resolve, much more than like, don't cook the books or don't steal your company's assets or whatever, things like that.
So have you guys run into any ethical dilemmas at LumiQ?
Thankfully, we haven't had any too serious ones. I'll tell you one that's really interesting. So in the US, it's based on a credit system, CPE, right? And so that's not based on the time listened. In Canada, the system is based on time. And a bunch of people were asking us like, hey, can we listen in 2x speed or like 1.5 times speed to your podcasts? It's like, okay, so if you listen to an hour podcast and you listen at 2 times speed, do you get a half an hour of CPD or do you get an hour of CPD? And we still don't know the answer to that. So we don't allow it in Canada. Whereas in the US, we're actually building it in because based on how the system works, it's okay. It's based on word count and quiz questions and things like that it's irrelevant how long it took you to do it.
So what was the hardest thing about getting accredited in the US?
I mean, what the folks at NASBA are actually great. They were really, really helpful. It was the time. It was like the time and the effort and like really trying to meet all those requirements on a consistent basis now. Like what's really difficult is every new episode that we build, we have to build in all of those questions that follow very rigorous standards. And so I think it's more of like an operational challenge than it is like anything else. Like we're trying to really reduce our risk as a business. We want this to be completely on side of every rule. We want people to know that when they listen to a podcast and get a CPE credit through us, that like they're good to go. They don't have to worry about it. And so for us, it's like, can we build the operational capacity as a small startup to ensure that we are meeting all of those regulations in a really clear way? And so it's like that operational problem and just time. It took like, I think 10 months for us to get through the process.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we have a mutual friend that went through the process too. This is earmark Blake, what we're talking about. At this point, most people should know, at least they listen to this.
Is he your arch rival?
No. I mean, to be frank, I'm hoping that one day we'll be able to work together in a good way. I like Blake. He's a really great guy, and he's a good thought leader in the space.
Is there anybody else that does this?
There are some people. I haven't seen it in the US as much, but in Canada, there are a couple of people that do more like, not like accounting focused stuff, but they'll be like, oh, CPE in general, and they'll do some of these like really generalized courses. But that's what we see as one of our big competitive advantages. And like, I'll give you an example. Like, remember the first time we did a podcast on blockchain? We're like, okay, like we want to explain what blockchain is to people because nobody knows what the heck it is. And the guy, our guest, sits down. He's like, well, the first thing we have to do is explain to everybody what a ledger is. And I was like, actually, no. For our audience, if anything, they can explain to you what a ledger is. So we can skip that part. And you know, I mean, that's obviously like a very specific example, but I think what we try to do in every sense of the word is create the kind of content where an accountant would go and be like, oh, this was for me. Like this was meant for me. When you go into like LinkedIn Learning and you type in accountant, you'll get like, you know, assets plus liabilities equals owner's equity. And like these kinds of things. Actually, I screwed up the formula.
Yeah, you definitely did that.
Yeah, I'm a really bad accountant, as you can see. You know, it's like really basic stuff.
It takes one to know one. All right, I didn't even know he messed it up. A real bad accountant.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that you see in a lot of these platforms that are like generalized platforms. And for us, like we have a specific audience in mind. We are doing this for accountants, and so we assume that you know what an income statement is. And if you don't, I don't know how you got your CPA. So, you know, good on you, I guess.
What are you doing listening to this?
Yeah, why are you listening to us? And that's I think that's what we try to, that's how we try to differentiate the content that we're building. Like I'll give one other example. We did this big expose on the SATYAM accounting scandal in India. And if anybody's not familiar with it, it's super interesting. It's often labeled as like the Enron of India. And you can hear about it on LumiQ. Shameless plug.
There are no shameless plugs on this podcast.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting for us was like PwC was their auditors, or PW India was their auditors, and they made some like really, really amateurish mistakes, or maybe, I mean, I don't want to say it was planned or whatever, who knows, that's still up in the air. Nobody will ever know that for sure. But like they did silly things, like they got the bank confirmations sent to the company and then the company sent it to the auditors and things like that. So they ended up being cucked. And so like we actually got to delve into what the auditors did and how they screwed the pooch in very meaningful ways. And like, let's get real. If we were putting this podcast onto NPR, 90% of people would be like, I am totally uninterested in the audit implications of this. But for our audience, a lot of them have been auditors, and they certainly all have been audited. They're actually interested in like, what did this firm do wrong? And hopefully the ones that are still auditors can be like, what can we learn from this mistake? So that's the kind of stuff that we get to do that other people don't.
Well, you know your audience, right? Like,
yeah,
you've capitalized on the niche aspect of this.
So it sounds like you're creating all the content yourself. You're not having outside, like Sons of CPAs, we couldn't go on there and just add ourselves.
Historically, that's been the case, but we are starting to work with certain partners. Like we don't want to be like a YouTube situation where, you know, I mean, I love YouTube. There's a lot of good, but there's a lot of bad.
There's a lot of bad.
Like we want it to be a very curated environment. And so like we're actually working with a group that focuses on, like, they're experts in financial modeling, and they helped us. They built a like 7-8 hour course on really good financial modeling skills that we added to the platform. So stuff like that, we're really happy to partner with those kinds of groups that have intense expertise in areas that we don't. But otherwise, we do a lot of the stuff, and we're really trying to push the boundaries. Like, one of the things that I'm really excited about is we raised a round of funding about 8 months ago, and I actually audio recorded all of the conversations live, like all of my pitches, all of me and my co-founder like talking about who we wanted to take investment from and who we didn't, and like our strategy around that fundraise and everything. And now we're actually turning that into a podcast. I mean, I'll give the credit where it's due. We took an inspiration from Gimlet's startup podcast. If anybody hasn't listened to that, it's amazing, and I highly recommend it. And it's just like, we want to give, like, the podcast can be on, like, how do you raise money as a startup? And it's really like, here's like an actual pitch, and here's an investor telling me I'm a stupid idiot and I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And here's another one who seems to think the opposite. So that's nice.
But you have an ending too. You did get the funding.
Yeah,
so,
we did raise that. We did raise that round. And actually, I mean, without too many spoilers, we turned down a lot more money than we raised. And
wow.
we're going to, like, in the podcast, we're going to talk about why we did that. So anyways, we're really trying to push those boundaries on the type of things that can be educational content. We always use this term internally of edutainment. It's trying to find the mix between the CPE that you're used to and Netflix, and finding that
That's
right
an
balance.
SAT word, edutainment.
Yeah.
Well, that's the title of this episode right there. Edutainment. I love it.
He just wrote.
All
you see him writing that down. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know
question,
how to spell it,
because we have to go.
Yeah.
If you could tattoo one word on your arm, what would it be?
Tattoo, one word.
Remember, you can get it removed, so you can do anything now.
Yeah, you can, but you have to go through lasering. It's annoying.
Probably the word that I would choose, this is going to sound ridiculous, is like shamelessness.
I like it.
Because that's honestly, like, that's the key to running a startup. So you just got to forget what other people are telling. Like, a lot of times people are telling you that you're stupid, that you don't know what you're doing. Like, I had a guy that I walked into his office to try to sell him our product. This was in Luminary days. And he was just like, fuck this, just come and work for me. I'll pay you X amount of dollars. You seem like a smart kid. Like, what are you wasting your time doing this stuff with? And, you know, that was obviously hard to handle.
And last week you went to his office and said, fuck you.
No, I need to exit the company. And then I wouldn't do that anyways. He's actually a nice guy. Like, he said it with the best of intentions.
Yeah.
But look, other people have said things without the best of intentions. You get a lot of people telling you to screw off.
He's offering you a job. It's like a backhanded type thing.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason that shamelessness is so important is like, how do I get guests for the podcasts? How do you make waves, make an impression on people? It's by doing things that other people won't do, right? If everybody was doing what we're doing.
I can relate to that more than you know. That's why I've been very quiet this episode. I've been listening. I'm like at the edge of my seat here.
You're quieter than you.
That's how we sign up if you're in the US and want some CPE.
Yeah. So LumiQlearn.com. So LUMIQ learn, LEARN.com. And from there, you can actually sign up for a certain amount of free credits to give it a try before you decide to take the plunge. And you can sign up online through your web browser, but I definitely recommend downloading the mobile app, whether you're iOS or Android. That's the best listening experience. You can do everything that you would do on another podcast app, like download for offline listening and bookmarking, and you do all of your quizzes in it, and it tracks all your documentation and everything. And the other thing that I would say is, actually, a lot of our clients are B2B rather than B2C. And so if you're at a company, a lot of companies like to support the education of their staff. We have a lot of success with people coming and getting their company signed up, and you get a discount, but also for you personally as a CPA listening, like, your company's going to pay for it rather than you. So it's like a win-win for everybody, because, the company gets to make sure that you're keeping in compliance, you're keeping your designation.
Does the company have an admin? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we give all sorts of cool stats on like what people at the company are listening to, like what things are interesting them. And we're building out learning paths so that managers at a company can go and say, hey, I want my staff to learn these things, or we want to recommend, we want to auto bookmark. We can do this where if you're a manager of a team and you say, hey, like this episode is great, I want everybody on my team to listen to this, we can actually do it so that it auto bookmarks it for everybody on your team.
Oh, wow. That's
So
cool.
when they
Well, I
go
think it
into
would
the
be
app,
interesting to see what people would listen to on their own, because that you might not know that they're interested in something like
Yeah.
that, and they start, and then you're like, oh, that person likes partnership tax returns or whatever, something cool.
Yeah, exactly.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So
I
please
thought it was
reach out.
super easy to use. I've used it and I love it. This is
Thrilled to hear that. I'm thrilled to hear that.
Well, Michael, this has been amazing. You've been an amazing
thanks,
guest. We'll come visit you in Canada, in Toronto.
Please.
Go Raptors.
Yeah, and you said Toronto like a Torontonian. Normally when I say Toronto,
I am
people are
1/4
like, what?
Canadian.
What's that?
I'm 1/4 Canadian.
Oh.
My grandfather's from Winnipeg.
Oh.
In fact, and I have a lot of family in Toronto. So
One of my favorite Simpsons jokes is when they visit Winnipeg, the sign that says "Welcome to Winnipeg" says, "We were born here. What's your excuse?"
yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
Never been to
Winnipeg.
Winnipeg. I heard it's interesting. Better than Ottawa.
thanks
no
for having me,
cows
guys.
in Winnipeg, though, right? Or are there cows up in Winnipeg?
There are accountants everywhere.
Well,
Yeah.
I said cows, not accountants.
Oh,
Jews.
cows. Oh, there's
Jews,
cows a little bit
cows,
more
you
west.
got
Go
everything.
to Alberta, then you'll get some cows.
Alberta, there we go.
All right, this has been amazing. Also, follow him on LinkedIn. He's got 23,000 followers. He needs one more,
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, we get a lot of engagement on LinkedIn. A lot of people sharing our episodes, and my co-founder actually shares a lot about our story. So there's a lot of people that have just kind of followed us through the ups and downs and reversals and everything along the way. So it's nice, actually. We hear it all the time. Like, actually, we just hired a guy. He's our head of technical podcast production, and he was a university prof at the University of Colorado. And I get on the phone with him for the interview, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been following you guys for like years now. Like, it's great to talk to you."
Oh wow! Like people feel like they already know you. That's
yeah. And it's like, again, mistakes and all things.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's open for everybody. There you go. Everybody knows about my tattoo now too. And then we'll see you with your shameless tattoo. Thanks, Michael.